Hello everyone. Today we will talk about hormones of thyroid gland. Triiodothyronin. Another name is T3. It is present in 10% of the amount, but it is biologically more active and there is rapid action on the tissues. It is more potent as compared to T4, that is thyroxine. As you can see over here, it is biologically less active, but it is present in major form. It is the major circulating form of thyroid hormone. Third one is reverse T3. It is present in less than 1% amount, but it is biologically inactive. Last one is calcitonin. As we had discussed in the previous session, it is secreted by parafollicular or C cells. Okay. Now about the synthesis of these hormones. It is a very important question that can be asked in examination. And I'll explain all the steps of synthesis by looking at this figure only. Okay. First, have a brief idea about the steps. Intake of iodine from iodized salt, iodide trapping, organification of iodide, that is oxidation, iodination of tyrosine, coupling reaction, release of thyroid hormones, and iodine salvage from MIT DIT. Now I'll explain all these steps in detail by looking at this figure, so kindly pay attention. So iodine, which we get from iodized salt, it gets converted into iodide inside the body. You can see here I2 converted into iodide that we take from diet, iodine. Okay. So once it is converted into iodide, it undergoes trapping or entry inside the thyroid follicular epithelial cells. You can see over here with the help of sodium iodide symporter, there is active transport of iodide from circulation inside the thyroid follicular epithelial cell. Okay. It is located at the basolateral site. Once iodide enters, it has to be shifted towards the lumen of the follicular cell. We had talked about this in the previous class, that there is presence of epithelial cells and there is follicular lumen. So from circulation, iodide enters into the follicular epithelial cell, and from epithelial cell, it has to be inside the lumen of the follicle. So it enters from epithelial cell into the lumen. You can see here. Enters from circulation inside the epithelial cell with the help of sodium iodide symporter, and from epithelial cell it enters via pendrin. Okay, pendrin. It gains entry towards the follicular lumen, towards the apical side, as you can see here. So this pendrin, it is chloride iodide exchanger. It is a transport process basically. Okay, so once this iodide, it is present inside the follicle, it undergoes process of oxidation with the help of TPO. You can see here TPO. TPO means thyroid peroxidase. Okay. Now this enzyme, it converts iodide into iodine. Okay. The process is called as organification of iodide, or simply we can say oxidation. Okay. Once we got iodine, second step is coupling reaction. Okay, coupling of iodotyrosine residues, that is monoiodotyrosine and diiodotyrosine. You can see from this figure, iodine, once it is formed, it forms monoiodotyrosine and diiodotyrosine. Okay. Now these derivatives, they get coupled. Coupled means वो साथ आ जाते हैं. One molecule of monoiodotyrosine and one molecule of diiodotyrosine, one MIT, one DIT, they will form T3, and two molecules of DIT, they will form T4, and the process is called as coupling reaction, जो मैंने आपको पहले बताया, coupling reaction. You can see here coupling of MIT DIT by peroxidase, and there is formation of T3 and T4. Process is called as coupling reaction or oxidative condensation. Once these hormones are formed along with the iododerivatives, they enter inside the epithelial cells with the process of endocytosis. Okay, so they are formed inside the lumen. Once these are formed, they can enter inside the epithelial cell with the help of endocytosis. Once they enter into the epithelial cells, they will be acted upon by lysosomes, and lysosomes, they will cause its degradation. So you can see the hormones T3, T4, these are released into the circulation, whereas MIT and DIT, these are used in the process of synthesis of thyroid hormones again. So that is how the cycle works. Okay, I'll revise it again. Iodide enters inside the epithelial cell. From epithelial cell, it enters towards the follicle. It is formed into iodine with the help of thyroid peroxidase. There is formation of monoiodotyrosine, diiodotyrosine. They undergo coupling reaction, and there is formation of T3, T4. Once these are formed, they will enter by endocytosis inside the epithelial cell. They will undergo lysosomal degradation. T3, T4, they will be released into circulation, and MIT, DIT, they will be used in the process of synthesis of thyroid hormones again, and the cycle will continue. Okay, clear? Once the hormones are formed, we will talk about their physiological actions. These are the sites where the thyroid hormones act. We shall discuss it in detail now. First action is calorigenic action of thyroid hormone. It is a very, very, very important action. It increases the oxygen consumption in almost all the metabolically active tissues. Okay. It increases metabolic rate by increasing number and activity of mitochondria and active transport of ions through the cell membrane. So it causes increase in metabolic rate. About nervous system, it is helpful in the myelination, neural development and mentation. That's why when there is the deficiency of thyroid hormones, there will be mental retardation and anxiety, worry, psychosis. Psychoneurotic tendencies, we can see. These are observed in the patient who have hyperthyroidism. Regarding cardiovascular effect, cardiac output is increased, heart rate is increased, force of contraction is increased, systolic blood pressure is increased, because systolic represents cardiac output. It is a function of cardiac output. Diastolic blood pressure, it is decreased. So from these two terms, we can make out pulse pressure will be increased, because pulse pressure is difference between systolic and diastolic blood pressure. When the systolic will increase and diastolic will decrease, pulse pressure will be increased. About the metabolic effects, very, very important effects. Glucose metabolism, it causes hyperglycemia. That's why we can label it as diabetogenic hormone. It causes hyperglycemia by glycogenolysis, gluconeogenesis. Regarding triglycerides, it increases activity of lipase, so it causes lipolysis. Overall, it decreases the levels of cholesterol. Regarding protein metabolism, when the hormone is present in the physiological condition, it stimulates the synthesis of proteins as well as degradation. But physiologically, there will be positive nitrogen balance. But when it exceeds the physiological levels and supraphysiological concentration, catabolic effect, it will predominate, and there will be negative nitrogen balance. Regarding growth effects, it will augment the effect of growth hormone. It causes maturation of skeletal tissues. On respiration, increases the rate of respiration. Minute ventilation, they will be increased. There will be increase in the oxygen carrying capacity of blood as well. Reproductive effects, again very important. It is helpful in the maintenance of libido and fertility in males. So if it will be deficient, there will be impotency and loss of libido. But in females, there will be disturbances in the menstrual cycle. Very important point to note here is that in hypothyroidism, there will be amenorrhagia, and in hyperthyroidism, there will be oligomenorrhea. It is very important. It's a very important reasoning based question. I'll discuss it in detail. GIT increases the motility and secretion of gut and secretion of gastrointestinal juices. Okay. Another very important action, there is functional synergism of thyroid hormones and catecholamines. Okay, because thyroid hormones, they modulate the beta adrenergic receptor response to catecholamines. Okay, so there is overlapping of their biological functions. Now, how these hormones are regulated? These are mainly regulated by negative feedback mechanism. Because TRH released from hypothalamus causes stimulation of TSH from anterior pituitary, as you can see in this figure, And TSH acts over thyroid gland to increase the secretion of thyroid hormones. Once there is increase in the level of these hormones, they will cause negative feedback effect at the level of hypothalamus as well as anterior pituitary. So they will self-regulate their concentrations. Okay.